Hi. This is a quick response to a critique of my video Israel, a Colonial State, which was done by a user called The Guy Who Did Stuff, who made a very interesting critique and pointed out quite a lot of holes in my kind of video. The first thing I'll say is obviously, this isn't a kind of an idea that would have to be, that I would desire to be done like straight away. This kind of pan-Arab idea would take decades to kind of evolve and kind of move towards. So it's something you'd have to kind of campaign towards for a long time. In your video you said that you felt a pan-Arab state would be unnecessary. First of all, obviously the kind of important thing placed first is obviously I'm a Marxist and I'm coming from a Marxist perspective. And from a Marxist perspective, a kind of a proletarian pan-Arab state would be extremely desirable for these certain reasons. Basically, obviously with Marxism the main focus is on the working class or the kind of majority. I know there's a lot of feudalism still, and I suppose large agrarian sectors of Arab society. But basically we're kind of looking out for those who create wealth. And it's my feeling that in individual nation states, a lot of the wealth that is generated through either resources or exports, I know the Arab world doesn't actually give much exports, but the wealth is obviously concentrated in the hands of the ruling class of these various kind of nation states. So the reason that Marxists call for a pan-Arab state and indeed a pan-world state one day is obviously to kind of redistribute the kind of wealth of these societies. The other reason is that individual states are very kind of vulnerable to coercion from kind of imperialist powers, and it's not, individually they don't really have the military strength to kind of defend themselves particularly well. They can sort of just be picked off one by one, as Arab society, as you mentioned, has become so fractured over the years. So on the details you said, obviously you have your Hashemites, your Assyrians, your kind of different religions and different kind of cultural groups. What I wouldn't call for, and a lot of Marxists do call for this, but what I don't call for is a kind of a centralised Arab state, i.e. kind of one head office that kind of directs how society should be run for all these kind of different regions. As you said, if you put these different groups in a room, they'll have very different ideas of where society should be run. Now, obviously I'm not calling for like an Arab USSR. I don't really agree with how the USSR did most things. I agree with how it did some things, but obviously I wouldn't call that as a model for a desirable socialist state. So I'd call for kind of a lot more sort of direct democracy, and kind of regional sort of autonomy on sort of a district level. Kind of things where people actually who live in, say in Egypt you've got, I don't know actually much about the different districts in Egypt, but let's say for example in Egypt you have 10 different little kind of regions, and I don't think Egypt's a federal state, and basically Cairo decides how the budgets for these different areas are going to be spent. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this is how they do that, but it's for example. And basically the idea I would have it is kind of more, almost kind of council communism in a way, of how people would decide these different things, but that's, this is a subject for a different video. I agree with having a Palestinian state. I believe they're going to the UN pretty soon. They're going to try and put it to a vote, and I hope they win. And yes, I definitely agree that they do need to build up their own kind of economy, gain their own resources. The problem is the support that a Palestinian state would have internationally still would not compare to that it gets from America and other Western states. the other problem is you're still going to get the violent insurgency, like your Hamas or these other kind of violent groups, which is again going to lead to kind of more Israeli kind of attacks. So, and when they do that, they basically just bomb the shit out of their infrastructure and they have to rebuild from scratch. But as you say, Palestine is it's held back by these kind of sectarian sort of views of these different kind of groups. So you're definitely right in that analysis. The reason I call for a full right of return for Palestinians is because at this point they are essentially a stateless people. One of the sort of tenets of Marxism is you always side with the oppressed nation, which is in this case, I believe, Palestine. And I don't really care if Zionists don't like Palestinians coming back to their own country, because it is their own country. You are definitely correct, as I said, about Zionists taking up arms and kind of intense sectarian conflict arising from what I was sort of describing as a Palestinian state. And that's true, which is, like I say, why I wouldn't call for it, like tomorrow, maybe in 20 years or something, to campaign, basically to give people a chance to campaign and sort of change people's minds. I mean, this is a perfect world sort of scenario, of what I believe. I believe that, I agree that if we tried this tomorrow, it would be a bloodbath. So, people's minds will need to be kind of changed on this sort of subject. You mentioned Nasserism not working basically for the reasons you described and I touched on a moment ago. Nasserism was very much a bourgeois ideology, and it was kind of doomed to failure anyway, because it's much like the kind of Sino-Soviet split after Stalin died. There's kind of a struggle between Khrushchev and Mao over who would be the sort of the leader of the communist movement, and that was a kind of similar situation in what was it called? The United Arab Republic or something like that, which I believe Nasser set up, and it was Syria, Egypt, and I believe Sudan were nominally kind of one country, but they still had their own kind of leadership, and they were obviously competing for influence. But Egypt being the most powerful, obviously that basically put Nasser in charge. And again, I briefly described the sort of regional autonomy I kind of described. I mean, what I wouldn't call for is a Sunni Muslim imposing his way of life on, or his views on society on an Alawite or a Hashemite or whatever. That's why I call for a kind of a district by district sort of autonomy. But like I said, they're all fair points. You mentioned Russia and America. You said compared Pan-Arabism to Russia and America marching under one banner for Western civilization. Of course, that would be a wonderful thing. I would love that. That'd be fantastic. But you're right, that wouldn't happen, and for very key reasons. I believe you're obviously more knowledgeable on the subject than I am, but from what I can see, the difference between Russia and American culture, and the difference between the individual states in the Arab world. In the Arab states, there is a lot less difference, and I think it would be kind of workable. Whereas, Russia and America, you've got different languages, different main religions, kind of, and historically they were completely opposed to each other. I mean, history plays an important role in all these kind of decisions or the way people see things. And one thing that you can say is that the majority of the Arab states were kind of allies for pretty much all their history. I mean, obviously there are kind of a few odd exceptions, but yeah. So that's just kind of a few points. Like I said, I wouldn't take this kind of pan-Arab idea into the United Nations tomorrow. and say, hey guys, you know, this is what we should do. I would, like I was saying, you know, I kind of just, this is an idea for people to think about and spread and kind of evolve and stuff like that, you know, as kind of a countermeasure. You know, I do believe that even if the Palestinians do get their own state, the important thing is that the question really hangs on whether or not Israel kind of recognises it as an independent state, which they may or may not, I'm not sure. But basically, whatever happens, this Palestinian state will always have the Damocles sword hanging over them of Israel and its kind of aggression, and there will be the questions of, you know, the kind of settlements and stuff, and yeah, something's got to change. You know, each side will have to give a bit, or this war will continue, this kind of Arab-Israeli conflict. So yeah, but anyway, in conclusion, I found your video very interesting, and you did punch holes in kind of the bits that I just glazed over. But yeah, keep up the good work, and thank you for watching my video.